Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show, presented by Any Question. I'm your host, Greg Bennett. And you know what I've been doing recently? I actually went through the archives and have listened to many of the episodes, mainly because I just am thrilled that I've just had such wonderful guests spend so much time having such incredible conversations. I just feel so privileged, honestly. So I spent some time. I went back and I've enjoyed several of them. I like to think as a host, I might have improved a little bit from the early days, but it was especially fun to go back and listen to those. I did sort of take a peek at sort of what are the top 10 ranked of all episodes. Jan Frodeno is on there. Dr. Dan Plews in 9. Tim O'Donnell, and when he came back from his heart attack, and we had a wonderful conversation last year. Flora Duffy, right after she won the Olympic gold. Lucy Charles-Barclay, right after she won the 70.3 World Championships. Jan Frodeno again, the second part of his special edition that we did at the start of 2021. Christian Blumenfeld, right after he won the Olympic gold. Sam Long is actually up in number 3 position, and we had a really fun conversation in person last year in Boulder, and I do need to get Sam back on again here soon. Jan Frodeno is also on again from his very first episode, and that was back in July of 2020. But number 1, and this is the episode I want to share with you all again today, is arguably the greatest coach in the world right now in the sport of triathlon and even in cycling. His knowledge is unbelievable. His willingness to share that with all of us is absolutely off the chart. And that is Dan Lorang, coach to Lucy Charles-Barclay, Annie Haag, Jan Frodeno, and several others. He truly is one of the world's great coaches, and he just drops so much knowledge in this one. So I wanted to bring it up to the front again. This one was recorded September 27, 2021, and has the most downloads for the Greg Bennett Show. And I will be bringing Dan on again later this year, but for now, I wanted you to enjoy this one. Also, Dan is on the platform Any Question. He is answering questions on there. He's answered quite a few already. And if you'd like to come on to Any Question, it is free when you use the code TRY2022. Use that code, punch it in, and it's free until October 27th. You can come on there, listen to Dan's answers that he's already done, and you can ask him more questions. I think we have there's hundreds of experts across multiple channels. You can ask all of them questions and listen to all their answers as well. I'll stop talking. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. If you have listened to it, it's worth listening to again. If you haven't listened to it, it is one of the most special episodes that I've done. And once again, special thanks to Dan Lorang for his time. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. All right, today I'm joined once again by one of the greatest endurance coaches on the planet. He was last on the show in episode 31 last August, and that episode was one of the most downloaded episodes in 2020 and is still in the top 10 most downloaded to date. So if you haven't listened to that one, go check it out. I encourage you to do so. Since then, his athletes have continued to excel and dominate, notably Jan Frodeno and his Ironman world record that he went and did on his own, Annie Haag and her mind-boggling victory at Challenge Roth, Lucy Charles and her recent Ironman 70.3 world title this past weekend, and all his success in the Bora Hansgrohe cycling team. Just absolutely mind-boggling the amount of victories that this guy has produced. What an absolute honor and privilege it is to have one of the greatest minds in the world of endurance sport join me for a chat. So welcome, and thanks for joining me again on the Greg Bennett Show. Dan Lorang, how are you, mate?
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Thanks again for this amazing introduction. I get already a little bit red in my face, so.
You know what? All I've done is point out facts, mate. It's just the facts. I've just read your resume. I haven't done anything else.
Okay. Happy to be back in the show, and I'm going well. I'm just arrived in Belgium for the Road Championships in cycling, and having some days also at the Scientific Congress during the week, and all fine. I'm happy and looking forward to the next weeks and months.
When I read an introduction like that, does it? It makes your face go red because you're a bit embarrassed. But honestly, you got to pinch yourself. I mean, that you've had a hand in all of that. Do you sometimes just have to sort of remind yourself that, wow, I'm actually quite a successful coach.
Yeah, to be honest, I think in the daily business, you don't think so much about it. I think that's normal and also good like that. You do your job. And job is even not the right word because I'm really living my passion. And but when other people talk to me and say, "Hey, do you know what you achieved already or what your athletes achieved already?" Always came into my mind some times at university when even some of the professors told me, yeah, but with sport science, perhaps you will get a job, perhaps not, you never know. And I will always sitting there and say, hey, I will get a job. I want to do this, and I want to work in high performance sport. And yeah, finally I'm here and really happy that I got all these opportunities along the way. And just also try to encourage if I have some young students that contact me or some other young coaches, I just will try to encourage them and say, hey, it's possible to go that way. It's perhaps not the easiest way, but it makes so much fun. You have the possibility to meet so many interesting athletes, people around the sport, and I still love it like on the first day.
Yeah, I love that you've gone from sort of that aspiring want to be coach, sports scientist to now mentoring, the young students and the younger coaches. I think that's a great role for you, going forward as well. I think that's fantastic. I think anybody that's reached the top of the world and what they're doing like you have, I think it's important to kind of keep all that stuff in mind. So good on you for that. What I'd like to do today is just a quick recap of your journey and your process, because we did do that in the first episode. But for people that haven't listened to that or maybe just want a little recap, we might just go over your journey and process and how you got to this point. And then I'd like to discuss all your athletes' performances in 2021, especially. There's just been so many outstanding performances. And then finally, we'll probably conclude by sort of really getting into your coaching methodology and really getting a bit more of an understanding of how you coach and what things are important to you. My last lot of episodes, probably the last half dozen, have all been in studio, and I'm missing the fact that you're not sitting here with me, and we are going to have to make that happen in the future. But for now, you're in Belgium at the World Cycling Championships, which sounds pretty awesome in itself, and I'm here in Boulder. Let's start by you recapping, your journey. I guess the first question on that is just giving the listeners an idea, where did your passion for endurance sports begin, and why specifically triathlon and cycling?
So my passion for sports began already in the childhood. I started with soccer. I played 8 to 9 years soccer, and I got a knee injury during the time. And so I was forced to stop it. And the next thing what I started in sport was strength training. So I went to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and trained there. And I met athlete people who talk about how much reps you have to do, how much recovery between the sets, which kind of exercise you have to do, and all that stuff. And so it seems to me, okay, there's more than just exercising. It's really, there seems to be some kind of theory behind it. And I start to read books, a lot of them. But I thought, okay, that is just a hobby. But then I went to university in Munich. So originally I'm coming from Luxembourg. I moved to Munich to make some civil engineering studies. And after my first degree there, I felt I have to do something with sport. I did some cycling races in Munich. I was in a cycling club. I did cycling at an amateur or semi-professional level. And I always enjoy to give people some advices about sports, about the science behind, because I continued to read this book, to going from strength training to endurance training. And then I took the decision at some point, okay, I want to give it a try. I want to start to study sports science. And here, the real turning point was one situation. And during my civil engineer studies, I worked in an office of an architect. He has a great passion for his job. So he was in the office until 10 in the evening and always fascinated about his job. And I assist him with doing the plans. And I said, I also want to find something where I'm in the office until 10 o'clock and I'm still happy with what I'm doing. But this will not be civil engineering. This has to be something else. And I feel that it could be linked to sports. And then my boss at this, or the architect tells me, go for it. You can work here as long as you want to to finance your study, but go for it. You have to follow your passion. And that was really the turning point where I start sports studies. And then I have the great opportunity to meet there Annie Hawk. And she starts her study with me. And she was looking for somebody to guide her because she wants to start it with triathlon. She was a runner and she has no clue about triathlon. And we said, okay, let's do it together. I start as a coach, you start as an athlete. And that was the beginning of my coaching career. So we went up year by year from local competitions to German championships to European Cups, World Cups, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and why triathlon? Triathlon is for me so complex. During my cycling time, I always saw the triathletes going cycling with the cyclists, swimming with the swimmers, and then in the end do the run training with the runners. And in my head, it was just not good to do it. It was just too much. So I said, okay, I want to find out how you can combine these three sports. It seems to be quite difficult to do it. And that was so fascinating to me. And that's why I started to go deeper in triathlon. But I did my studies. I work in sports medicine department. I went then to a cycling team called Cervelo Test Team. And then I start, after some years, in the German Federation as country coach in Baden-Württemberg. 1 year later, I was under 23 national coach. 1 year later, I was elite national coach. And and then finally, I ended up now in the cycling team. And still are able to continue to coach some of the triathletes, but it's also really important for me to have that contact. But it was really a step-by-step process. The only thing what I had in mind was always the first step. I want to get national coach. And I can remember also when I make some education with the German Triathlon Federation, so to get your licenses as a coach. And there they ask you, why are you doing this? Why do you want to get a license? And I told them, I want to get national coach. And they looked at me and say, hey, but perhaps we will see. But and some years later, I really achieved that. And that's a little bit how I came to sports or to coaching, especially. And then over the years, I have also to say from there to now, what changed a little bit is at the beginning, I was really interested in the training, in the data and all that stuff. The more experience I get, the more I get also really involved in or interested in the psychology behind the human being. So how is the psychology behind the high performance athletes working? And so to see the athlete more as an entire unit and not just the training and stuff around. So that was also a development step what I did over the last years, I think. So to really also develop a passion for the psychology behind. And now I'm happy with trying to work with this high performance athlete and to understand the person as a whole. And in the end, 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, a journalist also asked me, why are you coaching? And I told them, first of all, I'm coaching because I want to help people that they can achieve their goals, their dreams. I'm really fascinated about the human body, what you are able to achieve when you train. And the last thing was, and don't get me really wrong here, but it sounds a little bit strange, but the last thing was because I can. Because I had the feeling when I start to read these books that I can really feel what athletes can feel. So I have never done an Ironman. I have never done a Tour de France. But I can, when athletes talk to me, I really can somehow feel the pain, feel what is going on in them. And I think this is something what was in myself for a long time already. And that is also what a coach a long time ago told me. He said, hey, you don't have the theory, but I think you can be a good coach. And that's why, that was also really important for me to hear this and to think, okay, I'm on the right track here. And that's why it's for me also quite easy to jump deep into a person when I have time to talk to the person and when the person is also willing to open himself or herself to me so that I can really jump deep into to understand better the physiology and the psychology behind.
That was a really great answer. I love the fact that you had a passion, you set a goal, and you went about it. And it is almost the mindset of an athlete or an entrepreneur that does that finds something they want to be passionate about, and then they go all in. And for you, it's almost the side pieces to that is that you end up being able to help people. You're learning more and more about the human body. And I love when you said, yeah, and because I can. It's almost in your DNA. You found something that is at a deeper level for you. I guess on that, you've got so many athletes. How are you managing your time between the Bora Houndsgrow team and coaching all these world champion triathletes? How are you out? And you got your family.
Mm-hmm.
How? Let's jump right into that. How are you able to manage all of that?
Yeah. So I think you need. The big thing is that you need the right athlete for this. So when I look at my triathletes, they look or they have some attributes that are really important. So they look after themselves. They take self-responsibility. They are able to manage everything by themselves, or they have really important persons who are close to them, who help them in their daily environment. Sometimes it's a physiotherapist, it's a manager, it's like in Lucy's case, it's the husband. So there are also other people involved in that team. I always say, with every athlete, we have a team. We have the athlete, we have the coach, but we have a team around. This team is always different from athlete to athlete, but this team building helps me to be able to support all these athletes beside the cycling team. In cycling team, it's different. There, I have also time on deck, time together with the athletes. I'm in training camps. I am at some races. I have for sure some more contact with them. So there, it's a normal coaching job. But with the triathletes, it's really different. I just see them perhaps 1 or 2 times in a year at some competitions. So I really need athletes who are, first of all, 100% trust in what we are doing, and also believe that the way that we are working is working the best for them. So they choosing that way. It's not that somebody forced them to call me and say, hey, could you coach me? No, they choose the way, and we are really, really open in the first talk. I'm really, really open and tell them, that is what I can do. That is what I can provide. And for sure, this is something what I can't provide. I cannot be in a training. I cannot be at every competition. I can't come to a training camp. So that is, otherwise, I cannot coach you, even if I want to do it. But in the setup that I have at the moment, I cannot do this. And how managing all these athletes, I think there we come back to the point what I mentioned. I don't need so much time to really understand what is going on with the athlete. I just open the computer, look at the training files, and then listen to the athlete, and it's like an ongoing process in my head, and it goes quite fast to come to the point to say, okay, that could be our problem, and we could work on that, on that part. It's in normal life, so there are so much things what I can't. I'm not a good man who can work at home, and I have so much things what I can't do, but I think this is something what I manage quite well. And it's a 24-hour.
Yeah, I love the fact you're focusing on your strengths. You know your weaknesses, and you're focusing on your strengths. And I even love the fact that you understand that an athlete needs a team around them, and before you even take them on, you want to understand their team. I think that's fantastic too.
Yeah, it's really important to have this, and also to give the team the feeling that they are really important. For sure, sometimes the athlete is in the center. Sometimes it's the coach who is mentioned, but I always try to use the opportunities and tell the team, hey, you are really important, and we need everybody of you. And I think that is also the major role of the athletes. So to keep the team together, it's like in a cycling team. When you have a captain in the cycling team who is able to win, who can motivate his team, who can give everybody in the team a special feeling, then everybody is doing more than 100%. Everybody is really more than 100% committed to the goal. Somebody who is really good in it is for sure Jan. So Jan, he's a master example to have the team around, and there I learned a lot by working with him about these facts.
Jan's team with his manager Felix, and obviously his wife Emma, who has her own background being Olympic champion, everything else. He's established, and he has a very rock solid team there where they're all in. Every person on his team is all in, and that's a big difference. Exactly. What I want to do now is 12 rapid fire questions. Some of them are serious, some of them are a bit of fun, but all of them, you can either say pass or we're looking at fairly short answers. Some of them are going to be hard to be too short, but are you up for it?
Mm-hmm. I'm ready.
All right, here we go. 1, what is your favorite thing about your career?
That I live my dream.
I love it. 2, what is your favorite book to read?
I have a new one now, 11 Rings from Phil Jackson.
What is it called? 11 Rings?
11 Rings, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I know that one. So, yeah. Yep. Perfect. 3, what motivates you to work hard?
Athletes who are 100% committed to what they are doing. So if I have the feeling that they are 100% in, that motivates me the most. It's not the success itself. It's really working with athletes who go 100%.
In the last 5 years, what new belief or behavior or habit has most improved your life?
I would say the fact to deal better with, let me call it failure of for example, not be successful at a competition. Also, if an athlete was not successful, the team was not successful, to better deal with this and to separate more what you have in job from your personal feelings. So to be able to separate this more and not to let pull you down too much about what happens in your job. Let me call it like that. I think that was a process over the last 5 years what helps me to better manage also the responsibility what I have now.
Very good. All right, this one, you can probably say this one might be a bit too of a long-winded answer you got to give me, but I'll give it to you anyway. If your athlete could only train 10 hours a week, what would you have them do?
10 hours a week, yeah, depending on, so if it is a triathlete, depending on the goals. But if you have only 10 hours,
let's hit.
I would say
let's hit pass on that one. That's a hard
one. I would say go have fun, go do what you want, and because with 10 hours at least we will not win a big thing, but have fun and use the 10 hours as good as possible.
Good answer. Well done. All right. What are bad recommendations you hear in your profession that, other coaches or other things that people are recommending to athletes to do? Is there anything that stands out to you that you say, don't do that, and other coaches are preaching it?
I would say in general, I don't like generalizations. So sometimes, I give you an example, sometimes it's about this training method is good and this is bad. This is something what I would say really hate. So to generalize things or to say, I don't know, carbohydrates are good or they are bad. A fast and run is good or it's bad. So I think you always should see it in context. And I think people should always, when people don't know it exactly, they should at least look for to get all the information before giving information to athletes. If you talk, for example, as a coach about blood values to your athletes and you don't really have a clue, just let the doctor do it or get all the information you need and then talk to your athletes. Don't go to your athletes with just half of the knowledge. I think this is something what you should avoid.
All right. What is one of the best or most valuable or worthwhile investments you've ever made? And that can be in terms of money, time, or energy. What's one kind of big investment that you've done that has really paid off?
I would say all the athletes that I coach for free during my student times and even the time after. So my account was at zero nearly before I started to gain money. It was the point where my wife told me, at some point, then you have also to get money for what you are doing. How much do you want to try? Because I was never sure. I was never sure if it really works what I'm doing there. That's why I didn't ask for money. But then my wife said to me, hey, it works. How much time do you want to see it again? And then I started to make some money. But I'm happy that I did it that way because it allows me to get a lot of experience.
I love that it's your wife in the background, and I've had so many guys on the show and women, and it's the partner in the background that it really is the strength to make that next big step. And I think that's fantastic. I love that. All right, next one. What is one thing that annoys you the most?
When it comes a bit with the same that we had already, when people talk about something that they have no clue about. So when somebody asks me about
fair enough,
to give, so for example, if somebody asks me what can we do against COVID, I'm not an expert here. I can just give you what experience, what we have, but I am not an expert for that. And if you then, or I had a good example. If you see, for example, a girl or a female athlete, and she is really thin, and then people start about, oh, she has eating disorders and she has problems for sure. This is not healthy, without even talking to her or talking to the coach or talking to the doctor. That is something what really annoys me. So just to say something and without having any information about it.
That's a good one. Okay, so 3 light questions now. We've done some big ones. These are a bit easier. Okay, on a scale, this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
Oh. and 10 is really cool and 1 is not cool or whatever.
No. 10. Oh, you're my first 10.
Okay, but I don't know. I'm not cool. I'm
no,
5. I'm a 5.
5. Oh, he's rounded himself down to a 5. All right, here we go. Next one. If you were stranded on a tropical island, what 2 things would you want with you?
My wife and my phone.
Oh, good answer. All right, and now this last one, I promise, is very, very easy. Which decade of music is the best?
Yeah, 80s and 90s. So I would say I listen more to the 90s. Yeah.
A quick mini break to remind you to go check out Any Question. You can find Any Question on Android or iOS. It's Any Question, one word. Dan Lorang is on there. He's answering your questions, and he already has a bunch that you can listen to. So go check it out. Let's talk about your athletes. Let's change gear a little bit. And I want to talk about your athletes' performances specifically in 2021, because when I look at Jan Frodeno and what he's done with the world record, when I look at Annie Haag and what she did at Challenge Roth, and obviously Lucy Charles-Barclay and her recent performance, and then your Bora Hansgrohe team have had some outstanding results as well. But first and foremost, let's step through the triathletes for now. And I want to start with the most recent, Lucy Charles-Barclay, and that performance at Ironman 70.3 World Championships, where wire to wire with the fastest swim, bike, and run, and won by over 8 minutes. Now, there could be other world champions out there that have maybe done that, maybe Daniela Riff at some point, or I know there's been a few that have been close, but that performance, I need to know, firstly, let's start with, how did this relationship start? And then we'll dive a little deeper.
Yeah, so I read at the beginning of the year, I read about the project that Lucy and her husband Reese put online to say, okay, we want to switch to short distance race at some point, and perhaps making the qualification for Paris. So I read this. I don't know if it was a tweet or an Instagram. No matter, it doesn't matter. So, and I read this and I said, wow, if you make this public, it puts some pressure. And but okay, interesting. And then I like to talk to people, especially to coaches, and I contact them if it would be possible to talk about that project, because I would just be interested in to hear how they want to approach it, what are the ideas behind it. And I got an answer from Reese, and he said, yeah, let's chat. And we had a chat, and we had a good chat together with Lucy too. And it ended up with the question, but hey, Dan, can you do this with us? And I say, I was not prepared for that, to be honest. So because they say, yeah, we are already some years in triathlon, we have already some success, we're working quite well, but we think you could be the right addition to the team. So it's like, yeah, let me say a little bit like a head coach, we drive the program together and giving your expertise to us. And I said, yeah, that could be a really interesting project for sure. But first of all, I have to talk to Annie, because Lucy and Annie are competing in the same competitions. So I first have to talk to her and ask her about her opinion. And then I talked to Annie, and she just told me, hey, we are working now together for, I think, 16 years, and I can always trust you. We had this situation already in the past with Sarah True. And if I have fun to do it, I should do it. That was Annie's answer. And then I say, okay, I go for it. So I contact again Reese, and then we had a longer Zoom call, and and from there on we started to go on that journey with the goals to win Kona one day, and on the other side try to go to the Olympics in Paris. And that is the journey where we are on at the moment. And it's quite exciting also to see the development now, and also to see the good collaboration with Lucy's team all around. I have the opportunity to meet some of them in Lanzarote for 3 days, and was a nice atmosphere. And so we have a good relation. And it's not that I came and tried to change everything. So I came, make an analysis, and then say, okay, that could be the way that we go. And now I make the programs. I talk together to Reese about different ideas, and then with Lucy, and we are working week by week. So that's how we started to work together.
So on that, what was the exact date that you started? And I guess also, you didn't want to come in just rewriting everything like you said, but what kind of changes have you made that have helped to obviously take another big step forward?
I think it was I have to look, because Lucy did this trials in swimming for British swimming, and where she went for second place. And then after, she started again with triathlon training, and she started with a camp in Lanzarote. That was the first camp. I think it was it the end of March or beginning of April, when we really start to work together. So to make plan, and so that she trained after my training plans. And then the first goal was, okay, we will build up for Kona, preparing this. It was a camp, I think, of 4 weeks. And I think in the last week, British Triathlon came up and say, hey, Lucy, you have the opportunity to go to VTS Leeds. And so then suddenly we say, okay, we go for it. And we changed a little bit the program. And she went basically with a middle distance preparation of 3 to 4 weeks to Leeds. And it was quite amazing to see what she was able to do there. And and then we continued the project from there on. And and it was interesting to see how her body reacts on the training. So really in a fascinating way, really absorbing really well the training load. It was like writing a book. So I write a theory book and say, okay, this training should have this effect. And in the end, it was exactly like that with Lucy. Until now, you always know if you change, you could have a good increase at the beginning, and then perhaps some kind of stabilization at some point. But for the moment, it really went up, increases step by step, from week to week, from month to month, and is amazing to see.
So was that focusing a little bit more on aerobic conditioning or VO2 work or strength? What was it that was the big change?
It was not a big miracle, because you can imagine when she prepares the trials in swimming, she did nearly no triathlon training. It was a little bit on the bike, a little bit on the run. So what you have to do is build up the basic endurance. So what we said is, okay, no matter what we will do this season, we need to build the base, and that's what we did, working on the VO2 max, working on the basic endurance. So make some kind of polarized approach at the beginning, and try to also to adapt her body again to higher training loads, higher training volumes. She also has a strength and conditioning coach who adapt the program to what we were looking for. Basically that is what we did in the first weeks. And then after, for sure, we went to more specific training, depending on the competitions ahead, especially for the 70.3. But the main goal was Kona. So everything was based on Kona. And then we also said, okay, let's do a high altitude camp before St. George, and then going to St. George, seeing what happens after altitude, but also what happens 4 weeks after. So in Kona, basically, that was also a plan to get some experience there with her. And then we make some performance testing also to see where is she physically, or from the physiology side, in the run and on the bike, so that I got some numbers also that we were working with. And I have with her the same approach a little bit that I have with Jan. So it's not that we build specifically the bike or the swim. if it's even have a complete athlete as Lucy is, we build her as a triathlete. So we make step by step as a triathlete and not only in one discipline. That is also basically my concept. Sometimes I have to change it. If you have, for example, if the bike performance is not related to the run and swim performance, for sure you have to put some blocks there. But basically, it's quite good if you can really develop as a triathlete. And that is what we did, or what we are doing even now.
Did her performance at Ironman 70.3 World Champs in St. George, did that surprise you at all? Or, I mean, coming down from the altitude camps you did with a focus still on, well, I guess you knew right before 70.3 Worlds that Kona had been postponed again. I guess there's two parts to this question. One, how much did that change your program? And two, were you surprised with just how well she performed in St. George?
Yeah, I sometimes as a coach, you have these moments where athletes really, really surprised you. And I got this 2 times in nearly 1 week. So with Annie in Ross making this fabulous competition, really amazing bike performance and an amazing run performance. And then I think it was one week or 2 weeks later, then now Lucy, where she always reported, I feel good, I feel strong, I feel really good. And I was always like, okay, we will see. Hopefully she's right. for sure, I saw in the numbers that she's in a good performance, but in training, it's always hard to predict if you will have a really, really good competition, because the last part of it is always also the mental side. And she reports to feel quite well. And I'm a coach. You can ask my athletes, if I tell you are really good, this happens perhaps 2 or 3 times in a year. Normally I say, okay, it's a good session, it's okay. But I rarely say, okay, that's really good. So that's why I was surprised in the way how she performed after altitude. And even in altitude, not everything went right. She came there with some stomach sickness. We have to adapt it. She made a time trial there, what we didn't plan, then some kind of stuff. So not everything went smooth. And in the end, we brought it really on a good path. And and then I saw it on the ticker, and I was impressed, to be honest, and happy about her performance.
Yeah, I think we were all impressed. I think that was one of those performances where we all step away and went, wow. It was a bit like when Jan in South Africa 70.3 World Champs.
Yeah.
I think that was one of those where, and yes, his Kona performances, but I remember that 70.3 he did in South Africa with Alistair Brownlee and Javier Gomez, and I just thought, wow, that was a performance, that stands out. And I think Lucy's performance at 70.3 Worlds is one of those, for me, after being in the sport for the last 35 years or whatever, it really stood out. It was, wow, okay. Here's Lucy Charles Barkley, who's got a 3 seconds at Kona and a second at 70.3 Worlds back in 2018, and had some wins and some success, but this performance was, okay, there's been a big step up here. So I just think that one was absolutely fantastic. And now that now that Kona has been postponed, is that still the focus for February, or are you guys kind of thinking of another Ironman, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we have a plan now, but I'm a little bit conservative, because I'm never in this kind of when do you want to post what, about when do you want to announce that you're good. Right. That's why I don't want to say anything about this. But we
fair enough.
Yeah, we have a clear plan there now. We did it basically today. Yeah, but for sure, the goals stay the same. And I mentioned the goals. At some point, she wants to win Kona or the World Championship, and at some point she wants to qualify for the Olympics. And so we have to always look in different periods. When can we put the focus on the short distance? Where can we put the focus on long distance? Nobody of us really know what will happen in February, or what Ironman will do. Will they do the championship at a different place or not? I think what is important is that you stay active. Active, I mean that you are not waiting. In the end, you are disappointed about what will happen. So that you have a plan, no matter what will be the outcome, but you have short-term plans, what you can do now. And I can just tell you, physically, she feels quite good, still fresh, because she didn't that Ironman this year. And okay, mentally, she needs now a little bit, not a break, but to recover a little bit. But physically, she's able to continue. And so that's why we have a plan for the next weeks and months.
Well, I think that was a very good political answer, and honestly, it's fair enough. It's very hard to plan these days. When you don't know what events are going to happen. And I had Tim Reed on the show last week, and fantastic episode. Just love the guy. And he said, I was in Australia and I trained for 3 Ironmans, and all of them got postponed or cancelled within 3 to 4 weeks. So he'd done his big push, was probably just getting set to do, a few specific workouts and a bit of a taper. And they all got cancelled. And he said it happened 3 times in a row. Because I'm like, how are you over here in the US? Because to leave Australia is so hard right now. And he said, Greg, I just had to try and get some racing in. He's I can't go through another year of not getting to race much. So I get it. Keep it tight, you guys, and we look forward to watching Lucy race again. Moving on to, we talked about Annie Hug, and we kind of glimpsed over that incredible performance in Roth. For me, it was a real shame that there were roadworks, and so we know the bike was a bit short. I don't know if we know specifically how much. Maybe you do, but I mean, she went a 7-hour 53, won by over 31 minutes, and ran a 2:43 marathon. It's one of those all-time performances, and my only regret is that the bike, we don't know how accurate the course was. We know it was short, but your thoughts on Annie's race then? I mean, you guys have been working together for 15 years. Was that one of the standout performances for you?
Yeah, for sure, because you have to understand the circumstances. So she did the Collins Cup, and there she was completely disappointed. And then she calls me, and she was really like, will I ever be able again to do a good triathlon? And how could I do roads? I'm not ready for this. I can never do this. And what will the people say? Some stuff like that. And so it was big panic. We talked about it, and for sure, I know her. It's not the first time that that we have this kind of event and or this kind of talks. And then we went through it step by step, quite try to get the emotions out, go through it rationally, making a plan. And but still, as a coach, even if you had these situations already several times during the last year, also you as a coach, you always think, hopefully she will have a good competition, just a good one, winning in a normal competition, and then she's happy. But then she wrote something on the course where even I said, where does it come from? Wow, that is quite amazing. And this is what I said before. You can, from the training data, you can see if the athlete is fit or not. And that is what I say to Annie. You are fit. You are ready. I don't know what will be the outcome, but you are fit. You are ready for a good competition. And now we have to see what is the daily performance. How is your mental strength? What are your opponents doing? And then she did it in a fantastic way. So also there as a coach, you got surprised by your athletes, and it's always funny if then people say, Annie Hawk, she's the world champion. Somehow we expect something like that. And then if these people would have seen her some days before, 100% nobody would expect that race. So you can talk to her physiotherapist, to all the people that she talked with in these days. So I think nobody would even expect it. Okay, perhaps people who are really close, they would say, we know, and we will see. So they know already this kind of panic. But I was so happy for her, and she was happy after it, and now everything is fine again.
I think that was really one of the outstanding performances, and it's been interesting because we've had so many events and championships these last month or two, August, September, definitely September, everything's been piled in. But I think the triathlon community, we're getting treated to so many just wonderful performances. And that one, I didn't want to glance over that one too quickly. I'd like to have Annie on the show because I think that performance for me marks one of the better performances she's ever had. And she's, obviously won Kona and done incredible times before, but that one was, it was incredible. On Annie, just before we move on, what's changed in your training with her over the last 15 years? Have you guys had to change a lot, or has it stayed relatively the same?
I think the biggest change came for sure when she changed from short distance to long distance. So Annie is really some kind of, I always call it this kind of Ferrari. So her body needs a lot of energy, but then the body can also produce a lot of power, a lot of performance. So we have to change this a little bit to make her a little bit more economically working. And but still, and that is with her the biggest challenge. She always have in mind this short distance performance, and she has big fear about this. Oh, now I'm going to long distance. I will be so slow, and I can never run fast again. So it's also a mental challenge to go together with the athletes through that process, because you cannot say to her, but it doesn't matter. Long distance is completely different. It doesn't matter if you are fast on 10Ks or not, because you have to respect her thoughts, you have to respect her psychology, and then going this way together. That's why we also did a 10K run, I think, last year, and she did the best time ever on a 10K run in her age, and not preparing short distance races. So that was...
What was that?
Yeah,
what was that?
It was...
do you remember?
So she didn't do so much 10K, so flat 10K. She did a 33... I think 33 flat, or 33 and 3 seconds, something like that. And we have never done that on a pure road race. And she was so happy with it, and it was also the right measure. So it was really 10K, and she was so happy and say, "Wow, I'm still fast, cool." And so you have to deal with this, and that is the more difficult part of the process. And then on the other part, I don't want to keep away that for sure she also dealt with some kind of major injuries, what we have to take care of, and to come back with some kind of big hip problems in the past. And so with her, we always look with the minimum amount of running training to get out the maximum performance, because we know if we go over a certain limit, it could be an issue. And that is something what is harder to deal with. With other athletes, perhaps they are able to support more load, then it's much easier. But if the athlete has his limits, some kind of biomechanical limits, then it's really, we have to work really precisely and do a really careful build up to not overdo it. And that's what we did with Annie in the last years. And also with the swim, she had, for example, 2019, she has in the Ironman, she has, I think, one of the best swim performance ever. And we are working also on this together with the swim coach. And try always to improve and do something better, no matter if she gets older from year to year, but always try to work on different aspects. And because it's so fascinating when you talk to her, I have the feeling she has still the same motivation as if when she started with triathlon. That is quite amazing to keep that motivation and this passion for years. The same with Jan, for example. It's so crazy when you talk to him and to her, when they talk about triathlon, about competition training. Sometimes it's hard when you talk to younger athletes, you don't feel the same passion. Sometimes it's really interesting, and it gives you a lot of energy also when you work with these people.
I think you've just touched on Jan, so we'll talk about him for a moment. But it's I think he's been on the show quite a few times now, and one of the things that seems to really fuel him is this target that's placed on his back by his peers, by the media, by everybody, right? He almost embraces that target and uses it as fuel. It creates that anxiety that then becomes fuel, and so his motivation and his passion just increases because he's like, I don't want to be beaten. I don't, and he just keeps stepping up. And it's been an incredible year that he's just had with the Tri Battle Royale, where he set the world record for the iron distance in 7 hours 35 minutes. His performance at Collins Cup was amazing. Miami earlier in the year. The one thing that was missing though this past weekend was his decision to not race the 70.3 Worlds and have a nice race between him and Gustav Eden. Jan did outsplit Gustav at Collins Cup by about 20 seconds. And I think that would have been a really great race. But I know between you and him and Felix, you have your reasons. But as a fan, I was bummed not to see Jan on the start line in St. George. Was that a hard decision for you guys?
I think now it would be good to have Jan in the chat, because to be honest, we never talked. We never talked about it, so it was never a subject. Because when we look at our work, we have really clear plans with Jan always. We don't change it just so quickly. So it's really, we have this how also he calls it, the shots sometimes during the year, and we plan it. And when he's at the start line, he wants to know, okay, I'm at 100%. Because everybody expects nearly that he wins, even if now it gets harder and harder. There are so many good guys on the start line, and I think so. We said, okay, we want to do an Ironman this year. We want to find a possibility to do an Ironman, and for that, the 70.3 championship does just not fit into the calendar. It just makes just no sense, because when he's going to an Ironman this year, he also wants to show a really good performance. And that's why we said, okay, Kona will not happen. What is plan B? We made a plan B, and but then it's really focusing on the Ironman and not saying, okay, then I jump to the 70.3 championships. That is, to be fair, that is how we are working all over the last years, really, to plan things and then go it, and not just coming out of nothing and saying, okay, then I just doing something completely different. I think this comes from, yes, because if we see it like, I completely understand, as a fan, it would have been amazing to see him racing there. And I also think he could have delivered a good race, but you must also see his position. If you go on the start line, he can always lose. He can just lose. If he will, for sure, if he lose someday, he will at least be sure that he came there with 100%, and then he lost, and not 100% prepared and then got beaten by somebody. I think that would be not that what he wants from himself.
Well, I remember when you said last episode, and it really stayed with me, you said, my athletes don't use races for training. You know, when they go to race, they go to race, and that means they're prepared when they get there. And that's exactly what you're saying. When Jan Frodeno turns up, he's going to be ready, you know, and be ready to get 100% of Jan. But otherwise, yeah, he's not going to hop on the line so you can have cheap shots at him, and then he's only at 90% and trying to maybe use it as training or something else. You're not going to do that. So, I mean, how's your, you know, you guys have been together, was it 10 years now? It must be getting close to 10 years. How has the training sort of changed with you guys?
Yeah, we have, I think, in 9 years now. It's the 9th season together. When I took over Jan at the end of 2012. Yeah, 2012. It was his performance level. When I saw the performance test was quite low. So I always thought about, oh wow, these are the performance data from Jan Frodeno. Oh, okay. I was quite surprised, but surprised in not about how good they were, but that we had a lot of work in front of us. And in the first years, he also started on short distance. So it was a smooth transition from short distance to long distance, with the big goal to win Kona 2015. That is an agreement what we made when we start on the first day our relationship and our work relationship. And for sure, what we find out during these years is how much intensity does he need, how much volume does he really need. So for sure, he is doing a lot of training, but that we also give his body enough rest to absorb all that training. So to find out how his body is reacting on that. And also what he learns during the year is to listen to the body. So not to go over that point again and again, but really to listen and to understand what the coach mean with the session. So for example, if I put there, I don't know, for example, I say, okay, go 6 times 10 minutes at threshold, and perhaps there is something like, I don't know, 380 watts, and but it should be threshold. And then he feels that day that he cannot go there. For sure, he will try to push to go to 380 watts. But at some point, he also knows, okay, he wants me to be at threshold. So if it feels completely different, then he is also able to reduce a little bit the power at some point, and to really listen to his body. Okay, it's not his favorite, so it's rare that this happens. So normally he always wants to execute what is on the plan. He's really looking for this because he's 100% convinced that if he fulfills the plan, he will be ready for the race. That is a little bit, I think, something what he put in his mind. And so he always is working on the upper limits. So if you put him a range of values, you can be sure that he tries to reach the upper limit. But on days where he feel not so good, perhaps he learns also to accept the lower limit and not to completely put everything in question and to give the feedback. So I think that was also a process over the last years. From training, what we adapt is a little bit the same like what I said from Annie. We have to, for a long time during the season, we work like, I would say, middle distance athletes. So the training is more based on short and middle distance training, and just some weeks before, so let me say perhaps 6 to 8 weeks before the Ironman, we really focusing on an Ironman. So it's not that we are doing the whole year Ironman training. That is a little bit also the approach what I have with Jan, and what works quite well for him. And then sometimes, like this, also for the preparation for the last race, we also did some performance testing to see how his metabolism is working, and to see if we are right. Because if you're working together with an athlete over years, you know normally how it's reacting. But it could be that you're also wrong, that you think the body is at that point, but it isn't. And that's why at some points we also make some kind of control just to see if we are on the right spot. And so that's why we have over the years, really, we understand us blind, I would say. So he knows what I want from him, and I know what he expects from me. And that's why we are working quite well. And then, like I mentioned already, he has a great team around him with a physiotherapist, with his manager, his wife, his family. So it's the whole team always what makes this performance possible. And it would be, I would just lying if I would say, okay, we changed this point and everything went in a good direction. No, it's always an ongoing process to find out, okay, what is the direction of the body, measure it, and then going from there again. And if we find a way to prepare, it's not that we change this year by year. We also adapt. We adapt the learnings from the last year, and or we take them and just adapt them a little bit. And until now, his body is still reacting. And even 2019 was the best performance ever he showed on a long distance race. So even with the age of nearly 40 or 39, his body is still responding in a quite good way.
Yeah, I think in my view on that, I think he's got still a few more years. In my own personal experience, it was around that 43 was my kicker. It was like, oh, I'm suddenly running a 32-minute 10K rather than the 31 off the bike or something. And that was enough that now you're not competitive. And it was, for me, that was the bike power stayed. The swim was okay still to some degree, but the run, for whatever reason, that was the one thing that just fell off on me. So it'll be interesting to see in this next couple of years, if between you and Jan and his team, if you can keep that speed and power going. And I also got to add, you talk about, I remember doing one of my final run workouts was with Jan in 2016, I think, 2015, 2016 in Noosa. And you had him set out to do, I think we were doing 1K on, and if I said on was 3:15K pace or something, and then 1K easy at 4-minute K pace, and then 2K on, and then 1K easy, kind of that thing. And I remember running with him on the easy part when we're meant to be running 4-minute Ks. And all of a sudden I hear him just swearing. Ah! I'm like, what's going on, mate? He goes, that last K was a 4:02. He was so hard on himself in the easy part that it was a 4:02 and not a 4-minute. I was like, we were running trails and rolling, it wasn't, I was with Tim O'Donnell and Jan, and I think all of us are like, there's an intensity about that kind of, he wants to find the next limit, he wants to keep pushing and pushing. So I've seen that firsthand, what that's like. I also want to move on now, just quickly discuss your training methodology a little bit more. We could talk a lot about the cycling team that you're working with, but I think for now, with the time, I don't want to take so much of your time. I actually want to just talk a bit more about, the training that you guys are doing. You've mentioned a couple of times in the episode that, you collect this data and then that gives you an idea of where to move from. when you say you collect this data, what are you specifically looking for as a base measurement to then have an idea of where to work from?
I try to put it in words. So first of all, I'm looking where is the athlete standing from the metabolism point. So what is his, for example, what is his VO2 max? What is his lactate building rate? How is his economy? So just looking at these numbers to see, okay, that is the metabolic profile. I think that's a good term to say what to start with. So having a metabolic profile from the athlete, there are different methods how you can do it. It doesn't matter which method you're choosing, but just that you know, okay, that is what is going on in his body at the moment during the run, during the bike, and during the swim. And then you say, okay, I have competitions, I don't know, 3 months to go or 4 months to go. And then you know, okay, which kind of metabolic profile will be necessary to perform at the highest level at that competition. And then you make your you take these 4 months and you make different kind of phases. A normal build-up, I mentioned it sometimes, a normal build-up in my program is always at the beginning you have some kind of adaptation phase, so get the body adapted to higher training loads. Then we have some kind of, you can call it a VO2 max phase. I would say in this phase we train polarized. So on one side we are doing intensive intervals with VO2 max intervals. On the other side we are doing high volume training with low intensity. And after this phase we are going more to specific work with strength endurance. And at the last point we have race specific exercises. So depending on short, middle or long distance competition. This is roughly the build-up that I'm doing. And sometimes I do this build-up 2 times before the competition, sometimes 1 time. But in this period, you can, for example, in a VO2 max period, perhaps you also find sometimes a short session of strength endurance, a short session of race specific, so that the body gets already used to this, so that it's not some kind of completely new when you start with the specific block. So I try to mix it up, but to put focusing on different metabolic goals. And then for sure, I also have to see when I'm doing a VO2 max period, is the VO2 max, or is it reacting? So do I have a higher VO2 max at the end of the block, or was the intensity perhaps too high or too low? Or was the volume for this kind of work perhaps too high or too low? This is something what I try to find out that after these blocks. And then it depends from athlete to athlete. With some athletes, I work in rhythm with 2 or 3 weeks of load and 1 week recovery. With other athletes, we have 5 to 6 weeks of load and 1 week recovery, really depending on the athlete and on where we are. For example, with Lucy, when we started, I saw, okay, there's not so much training in advance, so we have to go slowly and we have to do a 2-week block, making some recovery days, then another 2-week block, and so on. But now we would also be able with her to do a 3-week block. So it's really try to get the body used to more and more load and not to rush that way. No matter if you have the competition in front, you cannot flick your body. Let me call it like this. Even if you want to, you cannot just be by increasing intensity or by increasing volume from one day to another. Just expect some miracles. The only thing what will happen in a short time, you can have an improvement, but suddenly after this, there can also be an overload, an injury, or something like that. That's why I say, okay, you have to slowly increase it and accept it that it is a step-by-step process. And that's why I often see also development over years with my athletes, like I said, with Jana or with Annie, who are able to perform at the highest level, even at the end of their careers, in the last year of their careers. And I think that's quite amazing to see. And that's the philosophy that I go. So always looking. So one main thing is to see how much load the body can really support. And now comes the bad thing about this. There is no metrics for this. So there's not the metrics that say to you, TSS is now at that level. That is what you can do. And you cannot do more or less. Because most of the values, or nearly all the values, take into account the cardiovascular system. But none of the values take really into account the bones, the tendons, so the body itself. And these are normally the limiting factors. For sure, you can also be overtrained by your cardiovascular system, but the biggest risk is just to get injured or to get overused. And this is something what comes with experience. And there comes now also the point, platform you want, it doesn't matter. So I open the training data, I look at the weeks, I have in mind the information from the athlete, I make my notes, and then I take a decision about the next steps. But I could not say this is now the algorithm to take always the same decision. That is a little bit the complicated part of it. And often, and also now with the software available and with the artificial intelligence, I think we can come close to that. Software can help coaches to make their life easier. But I think the kind of decision making, what I said or what I try to explain now, this kind of decision making will never a computer program can do that, because it's so complex and even hard to describe. And so that's how I'm working.
That was a really great, that was fantastic what you just said then, because it gives us a good idea of how you manage your athletes and their programs. You do the testing to start with, VO2, lactate economy and all of that kind of thing. Are you repeating that on any kind of schedule, like at the end of going through your VO2 specific phases? Are you doing retests quite often as well?
Yeah, but not that I'm always doing retests with lab tests, for example, but I try to define a standardized training session. For example, a classic run, I don't know, 8 times 1K and in specific speed. And this is also a performance test. So if you, in the end, look at the speed, the heart rate, okay, you have to see what was the temperature outside and all that stuff. But if you're doing this time by time and you expect a certain amount of improvement, you also have a performance test. So I never want to miss a training because I have to do a performance test or to be recovered for a performance test. That's not something what I want. The only thing what we are tapering for is races, and we are not tapering for performance tests. So that's why I try to integrate a performance test or let me call it a performance test in normal training. Sometimes this could be a lab test. Sometimes it's just a normal standardized training session. We have also some specific bike protocols with 3-minute, 10-minute, 8-minute testing outside, where I have developed over the last years some kind of matrix where I also get the values out. But it's always part of the training. It's never like, okay, and now we taper 1 week and then you have the performance test and then we see where we are going from there. I did this in the past. I would also not say it's wrong, but I just saw when I make after an analysis of the season that I lose just too much time with this kind of work. So that's why competitions, and that is the last point, competitions are also performance tests. And sometimes they are really great performance tests because we train for them and not for great numbers in tests. But the numbers are some kind of, or these tests are also an objective base to talk to your athletes, because if I have these sessions, for sure, athletes, they can also compare. They are not stupid. They can also compare last session to the actual session and come to you and say, hey coach, last time I could push 5 watts more. And now I have 5 watts less. So what happened there? Yeah, and then you have to find explanations. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you really have to go deep and analyze it and say, okay, perhaps it was this or that. But it's also a control for the coach to if you are on the right way or not. And it's more than fair to be honest to the athletes, because you should never forget it's the career of the athlete, and we should do everything what is in our hands to help the athlete to perform at the best level. For sure, the coaches are also involved. It's also a coach career behind, but that doesn't change anything for me. So you have to be honest to your athlete, and if you see no development, don't tell him that there is a development. Okay, perhaps before a competition, if you want to do some mental thing, but don't tell an athlete that he gets better if he's not getting better, because at some point you're just lying into your pocket. And that is what I also mean how I deal with my athletes. That's why I'm so careful with saying, wow, this was really good. Because when you say to an athlete, this was really good, you create expectation. Because really good, perhaps for me, means yeah, it was a good training session. But for the athlete, it means, wow, now I can win the next one by 10 minutes in advance, something like that. So you have to be really careful by choosing your words when you give comments to training sessions.
Well, that's your psychology background. I like that because athletes are always that kind of one moment away from not believing in themselves. You know, they're very fragile, and you get used to sort of managing the different personalities. I want to ask you a couple more questions just on the specifics of that training. You know, you mentioned the high to start with. You know, you start with the polarized training. You start with adaptation first, but then you move into VO2 and the polarized work with the whole high volume. What's an example? Can you give me an example of what kind of VO2 work you would do? Like, say for a run, what is a great VO2 workout that you enjoy, and how does that then work into the high volume that you would? An example of that.
Yeah, for example, on the run, I like to do the VO2 work uphill. So for sure, sessions that you also know, perhaps in a different context, like 3 times, 8 times, 30 seconds uphill, and then you go easy down. Then the next one, so with good stride, good technique, and then we go up with these times until 2 minutes. If you have 2 minutes, sometimes it's good to do it on a treadmill, so to reduce a little bit the recovery between, and so that you don't have to run down. But the VO2 max in running, I really like to do it on a hill, because for sure you can also do it on in the flat, but on the flat you need a really high speed, and if you run at high speed, the risk of injury is higher, and that's why I like to do this kind of efforts uphill. Also, when the technique is not the best at the end, when you get tired, the risk to get injured is higher when you do it in the flat. And then we can also end up in some kind of intervals, like classic one, like 4 times 4 minutes uphill, something like that. But it's always a build up. So sometimes I see training schedule or training plans. You have a normal training week, and then comes the big key session, and it comes out from nowhere, 4 times 4 minutes VO2 max efforts. And yeah, for sure, this is a big impact on your body. But I always have the concept that the body has to be prepared for that kind of training. So I always started with, like I said, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, then 40 seconds, so 40 20s, and then perhaps 1 minute, 30 seconds, something like that. So really to prepare the body for these kinds of impact, and not to read a really hard session somewhere and put it in a training plan because it sounds quite hard. You really have to be careful about what do you want to achieve with that session, and where is your athlete at the moment. So if you have a session, a really big, you talk to a coach or you have a big session in mind, then think about, okay, how can I prepare this session over the last weeks? For sure, the benefit is not coming from one session, but I'm 100% sure if you prepare this session really good, the quality will be better, the outcome will be better, the execution. So everything will have a higher quality and will have a higher effect in the end.
When you're doing the higher volume around it, how many of these kind of VO2, when you're having this polarized workout, how many times a week would you be touching on VO2 work? Is it one swim, one bike, one run a week or something like that?
I would say in total we would have around 4 to 5 sessions and spread over the 3 disciplines, depending a little bit on the athlete and on the situation. And the rest of the training, all the rest of the training is easy aerobic endurance. So everything else what we are doing is really aerobic endurance, even with some recovery rides or some recovery runs. But there you have to take care that you don't invest too much energy or too much oxygen, because otherwise the turnover for the whole week is just too much. And if the turnover, also the protein turnover is too high, then your body is not able to have an anabolic training effect. Then you come more in a catabolic process. So that's why the polarized approach is also so interesting and so and normally riskless if you don't overdo it in the intensity, because as long as you keep the easy work quite easy. So like I said, you have then 4 to 5 VO2 max sessions, and around this, for example, a specific day could be having a VO2 max in the swim, having a VO2 max in the run, and then a really easy bike ride. So that could be one day. The day after could be a really easy day with a long, starting with a normal run and a long ride after. Perhaps then you come with a recovery day, and then you do again a 2 or 3 day block. That could be, for example, a topic. And all my triathletes, they do normally 2 to 3 training or disciplines per day. Just on the recovery days, we just do 2 or 1 or 2. Yeah, it's about then dealing well with the intensity. And also what you should not forget is the intensity for the VO2 max has to be in the right range. VO2 max is not all out. Sometimes athletes are confused or don't understand. I have one example when I put this workout first time with a runner. It was a female runner. She wrote me back, "Yeah, I did the uphill sprints really well. I felt good." And I said, "What did you do?" "Yeah, uphill sprints." I said, "No, it's not a sprint."
Yeah.
It's a controlled intensity, and so I try to explain this, and that's quite important. Especially when you have an athlete with a high lactate building rate, you have to be really careful that they don't overdo it, so that they are not doing a high anaerobic training, because then it goes in a completely different direction.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing. Yeah, everybody takes VO2 and thinks flat out. And it's like, no. At VO2, you're still breathing oxygen. You're not going into anaerobic debt. It's not, you still have the ability, but it's pushing that little window of the ability to move oxygen around the body at a higher level. With the recovery side of things, are you collecting data when it comes to recovery, heart rate variability or glucose monitoring? Do you do any of that, or is it just athlete feedback?
No, so it depends on the athlete. So I really like HRV, so the heart rate variability. If athletes are doing it, how do you call it, in free will? So if they are also interested to do it, and if they do it daily on a good base, and if you really have good data, then I like it. And I like the HRV itself. I like the rest heart rate a little bit to see the process. Also in altitude, this helps a little bit better to understand what is going on. For sure, the feedback from the athlete is still the most important. Also, the sleep quality is quite important for me. But it's not that I say always to the athlete, you have to do all these metrics. So I tell them, this could be important, this is important, this would be nice to have. And then it's about the athlete to choose, okay, what will I do every day? What can I include in my daily routine? And then I work with this. And I sometimes come with some new stuff and say, can we implement that? Can we implement that? But in the end, the athlete has to implement it in the daily routine. With the glucose monitoring, I also tried it. I had it with some athletes. You can get some info. It's interesting to have some kind of calibration. For example, if you eat breakfast and you want to see how is my effect of a banana, how is my effect of oats or of chocolate or whatever on my glucose, then it's quite interesting to see the differences, or during a ride to see what is happening, or how is my glucose when I start to feel hungry, at which level is it, how does it change when I take my nutrition, and how is the impact of the nutrition on my blood glucose. That could help you. And what is quite interesting to see is during stress. So after stress, for example, or when you have stress, you see that after this period of stress, your glucose level still stays crazy, goes up and down, and doesn't come back to a normal value, or it needs some time to come back to a normal value. So that is something what is interesting, and but it's not something what I would use now the whole year or doing all the trainings or whatever, or to get too much focus on. So it's nice. You can use it for calibration, but it's not something what I use on a daily basis with every athlete, and where I would focus the attention of the athletes too much on.
Well, mate, you have given so much in this last hour 15, and I truly appreciate it. I would like to finish with 2 questions, which I like to ask each of the guests, because I feel like we all get a nice little takeaway from them. One question here is, you've given so much that this is almost erroneous, but let's go with it. What is one tip you have for people on just how to optimize their lives?
One tip is just sitting down and say, are you happy with what we are doing? And no matter what you're doing, if it's boredom or not, you should always go back to the point, why I'm doing what I'm doing here. I ask this my coach colleagues, I ask these the athletes, why are you doing the job? And just think about that. And then coming back to the points why you started it. And then you feel, oh, that's why I started triathlon. That's why I started to be a coach. So sometimes it makes really sense to come back to that point and to enjoy again what you're doing, or to find out, it's really not the way that I wanted to go. So then it's time to change it. That is something what I have.
That's a big one.
Yeah, what I have really good experience with, and what it just takes some minutes to reflect, but it gives you so much in the end to see, wow, I'm at the place where I want to be, cool, nice, or in the other way around.
I like that. I used to just say, do you know who you are? Do you know what you want?
Yeah.
And are you in control of your own life? There's 3 kind of questions in that, but it basically comes down to what you're saying.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Why?
Yeah, why?
Yes, I like that very much. And okay, next one. If you could sit and have a coffee with any living person, who would it be and why?
I mentioned the book 11 Rings from Phil Jackson, and I would really be interested to sit together with him. So, because I read now about his life as a coach with the Chicago Bulls, with the Lakers, and about how he dealt with all his personality, how he dealt with his personal life, the questions he asked himself. So that would be really interesting for me to chat with him and just to listen to somebody with so much experience, even if it's a different sport, and not only about the sports experience, also about life experience. I really like to listen to people and about their experience, their life, their thoughts. So it would be quite amazing to have that.
Well, you and me both, mate. That's why I started this podcast. It's like I get to have these incredible conversations with people like yourself and athletes and coaches and doctors and entertainers and entrepreneurs, and just getting behind their journey and their process and learning from it's just it's why I do this show. It really is. It's unbelievable just to be able to delve a little bit deeper into individuals' lives and understand their journeys. But mate, this has been fantastic. What's next? What do you got? I mean, the year's been pretty big already for you. You almost done, or what's happening?
Yeah, just to finish this, I think it's really great what you're doing there. And it only works when you also ask the right question and when you are interested in the person behind. Otherwise, it's just not working. Otherwise, it's, you can also buy a magazine and read it there. I think that is really, really important to ask also the right questions and to be honestly interested in it. And so that is something when I listen to your podcast or to all the fantastic guests what you have, that, it's a passion that you have also now for that. And that's something what you can hear also when you listen to it.
Thanks, mate.
What's up with me? I have now the World Championships in cycling, I say, and then the season is nearly over. We have Paris-Roubaix and with the cyclists and some of Italian races. Kona is cancelled, so I will not go there. And then at the middle of October starts already the preparation or the first team camp with the cyclists for the next season. And October is basically also the month where you sit together with the triathletes and talk about next season. Some are still in the season. Jan will do an Ironman. Lucy, we will hear in the next weeks what she will do. Annie will start in the 70.3 in the next week. So still a lot is going on. And then I think it's when once things stop, the other things go on, and that is so nice in sport. There's never an end, and but I like it, and I don't know the exact word in English, but it was never boring in my life until now, and it will not get.
I like that. You keep moving. You keep moving. Are you going to come over to watch Jan in the Ironman? I'm going to probably go out there. I'd love to sort of just sit and chat with you in person. Are you planning on any trips to the US if you can get over?
Yeah, I would really love to come to, but it's exactly where we have the team camp, and there I have to go. Otherwise I would really like to come. Perhaps I come to US in November for some aerodynamic testing, but and hopefully then next year, hopefully we'll have a normal year again, and then perhaps we can meet somewhere. Greg, it would be fantastic.
Yes. Well, that's a wrap. And that was a very special episode from Dan Lorang, one of my all-time favorites, the #1 Greg Bennett Show episode. Dan Lorang, definitely worth another listen to. I truly appreciate him. I will try and get him on for the second half of this year. I love those conversations. But in the next few weeks, coming up, I have Jody Kanema, formerly Jody Swallow, 70.3 world champion, Olympian, the whole box and dice, incredible athlete. And I also have a very special one coming on with Craig Alexander and Simon Whitfield together, where we will go down memory lane. We all started at Balmoral Triathlon Club about 30 years ago, and we just weren't going to share some stories on that one and have a bit of fun. So that's coming up in the next few weeks. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.